In our first ever guest episode, we chat with Sarah Marino about the growing trend of photography ebooks. We get into our own experiences producing and releasing ebooks, discuss the personal and business value of doing so, and cover the importance of image sequencing and writing. Our conversation also touches on zines, being mindful consumers of art, and keeping your audience engaged, while providing more helpful tips for anyone thinking about creating their own photography ebooks. Let's get to it. Well, Jeffrey, I'm super excited about episode 7 of Shuttered Nonsense. Not only is it Lucky 7, it's Friday the 13th, which take that as you will, but it's also our first ever guest episode with a secret guest that you don't know about, right? Totally surprise to you.
That's right. Total surprise.
So let me read first of all, for anybody listening / watching, I'm totally ripping this idea of a surprise guest for my co-host off from the podcast Smart List with Will Arnett and Jason Bateman and the guy from Will and Grace, whose name I can never remember. But anyways, kudos to them for giving the idea. I thought it'd be kind of a fun take on things to try to surprise each other when we do have a guest on, to keep the other host in the dark on it. So let me just read this intro. I'm going to read it off the paper so I don't get anything wrong, and I'm not that eloquent off the cuff anyways. And then we'll do the grand unveiling for Jeffrey here. So let's see how this goes. So our first ever guest on Shutter Nonsense is a celebrated nature photographer, writer, and educator whose work centers around a thoughtful, quiet style of photography that emphasizes observation, intimacy, and personal expression. They've built a reputation for their ability to see beauty in nature's small scenes, intimate landscapes, plant portraits, natural abstractions, and subtle details that many might overlook. They're also widely respected for their commitment to photography with honesty and purpose. In addition to their photography, they're also highly regarded as an educator. They're a co-founder of the Nature First Photography Alliance and have spoken at major conferences such as Out of Chicago, NANPA, and the Moab Photo Symposium. Please welcome to the show the one, the only, the most excellent human being and photographer, Sarah Marino.
That is by far the most grand introduction I've ever received.
And
we do
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, please calm down, Jeffrey. That was way too... Woo-hoo. So the big secret here is Jeffrey totally knew who this was going to be because we had already talked about it before I had the idea to keep guest secrets. So this is all a ruse. But Sarah, definitely welcome to the nonsense that is our podcast. And again, super thankful that you agreed to do this as our first guest. As we were talking just a moment ago before we officially kicked off the recording, and have no idea how this is going to go. I'm both excited and nervous to potentially bungle my first guest on the podcast. Not that I have any doubt about you. It's all about my own personal doubts about my ability to guide a conversation with three of us and try to rein us in a little bit if we start talking over each other or whatever. So let's kick it off with what we've been up to before we get into the topic of the show. Sarah, we'll let you lead this since you're our lovely guest. What have you had going on lately? What you got coming up? Share away.
The best thing is I don't have much coming up. I'm so excited. We have had an absolutely crazy winter and spring, so I'm thrilled to be at my house for the foreseeable future. I'm teaching 2 workshops with the Crested Butte Wildflower Festival in July. Nice. And then we have plans to go to New Zealand this fall. But otherwise, I have an open schedule, and I'm so excited. I get to actually catch up. My brain can actually have some time to just think, and I can figure out what I want to do next. So that's pretty much, we just got back from Telluride, Colorado. I did a native plant class. I'm working on a native plant certification, and that's the second of the third of 3 classes I have to do. So that was a lot of fun. And then otherwise, we've just been traveling a lot. So
nice.
A nice combination of lots of fun stuff and coming up less fun stuff, which I'm actually really looking forward to.
Well, I'm definitely jealous about the New Zealand trip. That would be awesome. I'd love to get over there. Been to Australia once, but I was kind of right in the early days of my photography journey, and I didn't take my real camera with me. I just took a point and shoot. But anyways, and was it you and Ron that spent a pretty good stretch in Death Valley? I know you kind of go there every year, don't you? But wasn't that just recently, or am I thinking of somebody else?
We do go there a lot. So we started out the year, we had planned to go to Death Valley, but I sprained my ankle, and there's no way the Death Valley terrain was going to work with my ankle situation. So we had planned to be in Death Valley around the new year, but instead we went to California, did the Big Sur Coast and Yosemite, just car camping. And then we took our trailer. We got home, I did a conference, and then we went to Death Valley. We were there for 7 weeks.
Yeah,
So,
okay. I knew you had been there. I was thinking it was
Yeah.
you that had been there for a good extended period of time.
Yeah, hanging out in our trailer, doing a lot of, we had friends passing through. So really nice social time, really nice photography time. The conditions with the sand dunes this year were incredible. Like the windy sandstorm days were just great. So that was a really nice highlight.
Have you shared any Yosemite stuff yet? Actually, that's what you sent me
Yeah, I sent you some
yesterday, wasn't
Yosemite
it?
stuff as a
Your
joke.
collection of bark.
Yeah. So I'm working on my Yosemite stuff, and that will probably be my next free ebook. So
Good.
that'll
So
be a
perfect.
little.
We'll
thing we can
put
discuss
that in
later.
the parking lot, as the corporate world would say, and we'll use that as a segue. So
That sounds good.
yeah, definitely anxious to see what you came away with from Yosemite. I'm sure it's going to be some beautiful and probably some pretty unique stuff that you may not necessarily see from that park a whole lot. So great. Jeffrey, how about you? Anything besides the podcast? I know that's, again, what my life has been largely consisted of.
A lot of podcast stuff, same as you, working on that. I have an interesting, I'm going to keep it vague, but potential collaboration opportunity with a local business here in town that it could be sort of unique in what we do with it. So I had a meeting with them last week on using a few of my images for a project they've got, and it's we'll see how it unfolds before I reveal a whole lot more, but it involved me curating a few images and putting some text with them. And it's an interesting little shop here in town, and we'll see what happens with that. But I'll reveal more as we get a little further on that path. But
Is the text "live, laugh, love" or "hang in there"?
Not quite that kind of text. A little more thoughtful than that. But we'll see how it goes. How it goes.
Yeah, for me, pretty much the same. Podcast work. I've gotten back on track with my feature frame series over on Patreon after taking that week off for the sake of the podcast. And then the biggie, I don't know.
That's right.
Not
Big
quite
news.
prepared for this, but if you can bear with me for a second, I totally should have prepared for this. I finally got my boxes. So my box set is officially up for pre-order. Of course, by the time you listen to this, it's probably well out of pre-order and already for sale on my website. But currently, again,
might even be sold out.
Yeah, well, that'd be fantastic. But in our bizarro podcast timeline world, it is currently up for pre-order for Patreon supporters, free followers and supporters. And then in 6 days, it'll be going out for public pre-order. So definitely excited about that. So that was a huge relief. That was like 5-6 weeks it took to get it in. Again, I don't know why it took quite so long, but actually, you may not be able to see me, but I've got proofing prints piled up behind me to do my final, does everything look good? Fortunately, that's been actually a little bit easier than past years. For whatever reason, a lot of the prints are looking really good with very minimal adjustments. So that's a huge bonus. Yeah, I feel like I've been running around like crazy, but that's really all I'd say I've got to report is podcast. So
It's been podcast a lot, that's for sure.
it has. Oh, speaking of podcast, and again, future us / past us, whatever timeline you're in when you actually listen to this, we're discussing releasing episodes early for our Patreon supporters and probably for our paid supporters, not for everybody, because obviously we want to give reward to the people that are financially in the game, so to speak, to help this podcast keep rolling. So if we haven't officially announced it, I guess stay tuned. If it's already out there and live and we've been doing it, yay us. Thank you for everybody that's financially pledged on Patreon. But trying to figure out the logistics behind that. I was chatting with Matt Payne a little bit yesterday about how he manages the early release episodes versus the public releases and all that. So I got to wrap my head around that. But anyways, Sarah had provided that nice segue a few minutes ago about her Yosemite work and leading into her next ebook, most likely. So that is the topic of the day, topic du jour. So let's jump into that. I guess, first of all, Sarah, I've been doing some free ebooks with new work releases. I've done it with even pulling work from my archives that is new to the world, so to speak, but it's not brand new work from a single trip or anything. I've done some kind of compilation releases lately. And a lot of that, well, really, I'd say probably 95% of that is thanks to you and what you've been doing with the ebooks. And Ron has been doing them as well. I think Jennifer Renwick, I've seen David Kingham, and I believe Michael Bellino. I think Matt Payne did one earlier this year. So it's something that a lot of people are kind of diving into. But I feel like, Sarah, you were one of the first, at least, that I saw do it especially from a free standpoint. Like, hey, I'm putting out this collection of work. Maybe it's got a fair bit of writing. Maybe it's more centered around the imagery. But I guess kind of what spurred you to go down that path, and what do you see as the benefits of it? And maybe we can get into a little bit later, potentially some of the pitfalls or cautionary sides of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brooks Jensen is the first person that I saw putting out his work in free PDF ebooks. So I do want to acknowledge Brooks for Brooks Jensen with Lenswork magazine.
Yeah.
I think I was probably the first among our peers to start doing it a couple of years ago. And so I started my photography business first with an ebook. So when I was transitioning from my previous career, where I did a lot of really large reports, so as part of that process, I was used to putting the report into more of a fancy publication format that then I could share either with a client or publicly. So I had that professional experience, and it seemed very easy to then translate that professional experience into what I was doing with my photography. So Michael mentioned Ron, and Ron is my husband, Ron Cascarosa. And
I should have pointed that out. Yes, not just some mysterious guy named Ron.
No, this mysterious
Insider
Ron.
knowledge.
He probably prefers the mysterious.
I mean, I was actually thinking about introducing him as kind of the joke of, who's Faith Hill's husband? He always gets referred to as Faith Hill's husband, and never his own name. And I can't remember his name, so I was going to say her husband, who is known as Sarah Marino's husband.
Yes, but he is also a great landscape photographer. I do it as a career. Yes. He does it as it's so much more than a hobby. So it's ridiculous saying hobby. But so in 2012, we went to Iceland for the first time. And at that point, there were very few resources. Like, we had a Lonely Planet guidebook and a map, and there were no photography resources whatsoever. So once we got back from that trip, and then we did an additional trip, we thought we should do an ebook. So we created our first paid ebook, which was Forever Light, the Landscape Photographer's Guide to Iceland. And then that led me into developing a variety of paid ebooks. So that's really the core of my photography business. But then more recently, I was starting to think, so I have all the skills to put together an ebook. I'm not satisfied with the other ways of sharing my work. So why don't I essentially translate the essay that I write and put on my blog and the photos that I put in a gallery, put them together with the exact layout, exact sequencing, and exact presentation that I want, and share them that way. And in my case, I don't have any paywall. I don't have any sign up required. You just one click, it opens in Dropbox and downloads on somebody's computer. So that's kind of the 2-paragraph way reason that I got here.
So backing up to the paid ebooks, those were mostly centered, or are mostly centered around more educational or resource driven, right? As opposed to your work.
I have one that is a portfolio with essays. So that's the lessons from the landscape from Yellowstone. And that's a large body of work. It's probably, I would guess, like at least 150 photos. I think there are 10 or 11 essays and in-depth essays. They're all about Yellowstone, and they're all pretty personal. So I would consider that so it's the lowest price point ebook I have, and it's the least educational. I still think the essays are helpful, but it's not meant to be instructional. Whereas the free portfolio ebooks, I usually have one essay that's usually no more than 2,000 words. And then I have a portfolio of, say, 50 to 75 photos focused on a location.
Right. And I assume these have done pretty well for you, because you've been doing them for several years now at least, and you continue to do them. So I assume you're seeing the value behind doing so.
I think the main value is, so I think that people feel as if it's maybe a little bit higher effort than just a gallery release. So it feels like I'm offering something of value back to mostly my mailing list, in a way that maybe feels like a little bit more of a gift than so that it maybe feels like a little bit more of a reciprocal relationship. Like a lot of these people have bought my ebooks in the past, they've bought my video tutorials, maybe it feels a little bit more reciprocal, like they're getting something that's a little bit of a thank you. So I think part of it is that I feel like it's a more meaningful way to connect or to share my photography in a way that feels right for me. But then it also, to me, feels like maybe I'm offering a little bit more and I'm asking for a little bit more than just quickly scrolling through a gallery of photos on my website.
Right.
I think for all of those reasons, I feel like it's a little bit more. I just feel like I'm offering a little bit more, asking for a little bit more, and I like that feeling because it elevates my photography beyond like a flick past on Instagram or.
And when you're saying you're asking for a little bit more, it's really around asking the viewer to take time to spend more time with your work, right? Not
exactly.
You're not asking. Obviously, you're not asking for money, although I think you accept donations related to them. But it's really more around asking your viewers to, hey, take the time to kind of actually sit and appreciate, read the essay, what have you, and as opposed to, like you said, the flicking through a gallery or obviously social media and all the the craziness and baggage that comes along with that world.
I mean, that's one of the conundrums, right, these days for a photographer, I think, is how you release, how it's consumed. We all will talk about social media and, like Sarah said, how fast you're flipping through images, a quick heart, you spend 2-3 seconds sometimes on something you really like. You still only spend that 2 or 3 seconds. And then, the website gallery release, that's probably a step above, the social media. People are probably a little more intentional going there. But if you're anything like me, if I've got a browser tab open, it's probably one of many. So I'm still semi-distracted. Whereas that ebook release, yes, I could be consuming it on a computer, but I feel like I can also put it on the iPad and go into airplane mode and more deliberately consume it. So I feel like, the ebook process, it's almost like that process of release and how do you get it out to the people in a way that people can enjoy the work instead of just that scrolling through.
Right. And that's what I like about it. And again, why I decided to delve into it. I think my first one was early in 2023. I released my fall photos in an ebook format for free. It gives you, just like you were saying, Sarah, like it's inviting the viewer obviously to spend more time and ideally they're viewing it on at least an iPad, if not a computer monitor, and seeing it quote unquote in its full glory as opposed to just little postage stamp size thumbnails on a phone. But to me, it gives you the opportunity to really curate it and tell the story, maybe not even through words, but tell the story through the sequencing. And I know you and I have had conversations on that, and I can't recall if it was that first ebook that you graciously gave me some input on, or if it was my second one, but a lot of your feedback was around the sequencing and how to handle black and white images in a predominantly color collection of work and so on and so forth. So I guess maybe can you speak to the sequencing approach that you take a little bit and the considerations you put into that? 'Cause I feel like that was like half the feedback and input you gave me was around my sequencing and also like culling work out. I know you've had conversations on the same Discord that we're on that you're not real big on like extreme curation as far as limiting the number of images that you include or that you put in your portfolio online or whatever. But anything you can speak around the sequencing and then your I guess, decision-making process of what would make the cut versus where you might make the decision to keep something out.
Yeah, we could talk about this for days.
Right.
Like all of these topics are such huge questions that photographers need to consider in presenting their work and also deciding on who do you want in your audience. So there are so many layers to this discussion. I think the first thing that I'll say is that my photography, I don't think I have photos that really stand on their own. I'd say probably 10% of my work maybe is what I would consider a standalone image where I could post it by itself on Instagram and feel like it has something to say all by itself. I think the rest of my photos, they work together to tell a story about a place. So my goal is to have a viewing experience that's some kind of highs, some kind of lows in terms of visual intensity, and that together that viewing experience is more up kind of a flow through a story of images. And then some of the what might be considered weaker or plainer images, they're there to help tell a more complete story. So that if I think of my work as say I go to a place, we can use this Yosemite portfolio that I'm working on as an example. So I feel like when I go to a place, I want to tell the story that is that first impression. So the things that if any photographer, any viewer was standing there, most people would say, oh yeah, that's an incredible mountain and there's interesting light on it. Like that, it speaks to you. And then I'm also really interested in the second impressions, which are the things that it takes more observation and it takes getting to know a place and like moving slowly through the landscape. And so as I'm curating that story, I want to think about both those visual highs and lows and the first impressions and the second impressions. And then I also want to think a lot about color, shapes, tonality, mood, and using those as themes to guide me through the curation as well. So those are a lot of things that I'm thinking about when I'm out photographing and when I'm working on presenting my work. And it's really hard to do those things in a web gallery. But I think it's a lot easier to do when you're thinking about how are the images flowing in terms of color, how are they flowing in terms of theme, mood, and then sequencing based on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the use of color and shapes and textures as kind of a way to manage the sequencing. I've been looking at it on the last couple I've done. And as far as like, I also do sequencing. For instance, I've got 70 something new images from my local park that I recently pulled from my archives. And technically they're released. I'm starting to share them on social media, but I don't have them up my website yet. I just haven't had a chance to get to it, which is not typically how I would do it. I would typically get the gallery set up on the website. If I'm going to do an ebook, I would do an ebook. But even so, like with the sequencing of posting them to social media, but certainly when I do get them up on the website, I've been kind of thinking about it also, not just from like telling the story, like you said, like, oh, here's the big and obvious. And Jeffrey and I just talked about this a couple episodes with grand scenes versus small scenes. And how do you learn to see the less obvious and I guess delve into that curiosity side of hopefully your creative self. But also when it comes to the sequencing standpoint, like you said, like, here's the place. Now let's delve down and dig into the soul of the place is the way I frame it. But also I've been looking at it as kind of like a musical score. And I think similar to you, you're talking about the flow and kind of ups and downs, but I like to, if I'm going through and, okay, I've got a series of maybe quieter or smaller scenes that are all not necessarily, like you were saying, like not necessarily hugely impactful on their own, but together in a string, they might tell the story. But then I like throwing that curveball in and like, oh, here's something big and bold or dramatic light or whatever, just to kind of keep the viewer like on their toes, like, ooh, what's going to come next? And to your point with the web gallery, you can do that and you've certainly got more control over it than relying on a social media platform that's algorithm driven. And the thing you posted a week ago might get shown before the thing you posted earlier in the day or what have you. But even on your web gallery, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. You get the mouse wheel going and you just flick and like, wait for that thing to jump at you and stop it real quickly. I figure at least with the ebook setup and to Jeffrey's point, I would like to think the best way to view my ebooks is on an iPad because the experience feels more like going through a zine or something like that. But yes, they can just flip through real quickly, but there's not like the thumbnail list where they can kind of, oh, I'm going to just jump right to that one. That one kind of piques my curiosity or whatever. So I do think it's certainly a more curated / guided way of doing it. And yeah, I'm trying to find that like balance of, again, using the musical score as a comparison, like the softer parts and then the loud crash of cymbals or whatever that might get a jolt out of you or catch you off guard or what have you. Trying to think about it from that viewer standpoint, so that they don't get bored, because if it's just like, here's a tree, here's a tree, here's a tree, here's a tree, we've talked about it on this podcast before, like at some point, like, okay, enough with the trees already, give me something a little bit different. That's where I want that surprise to be in the mix. So, and again, that's probably a lot comes from the input you've given me, because that is in my mind all the time with new work and the sequencing I'm working on, but also just observing your ebooks over the years. I've downloaded, I think, every single one of yours and Ron's and plenty of others, and kind of I'm doing it to enjoy the work, but also taking that critical eye of my own to it and like, all right, how are they really doing this? How are they setting it up to guide me through? One thing I'd be curious about, you mentioned you write one essay per ebook and you try to limit it to 2,000 words. Did you land on that through trial and error, or is it just kind of how you decided to do it right off the bat? Because I've done both, where I've done one with basically no written content at all. The last one I did had a ton. I wrote something on every single image, similar to what Jennifer Renwick's been doing with her monthly releases this year, which have been awesome. So I put all this work into every image having at least a quarter page, half page of written text with it. And it's my worst performing ebook. So It's kind of like, oh, I put all this effort into it. So I'm curious kind of how you arrived at, because yours are really, it's an introductory essay, isn't it? So how did you arrive at that decision, or was it just kind of something that's just the way you decided to go and you've just stuck with it?
Recently, I think, so my first ebook was a Chicago Botanic Garden portfolio. So I had taught with Out of Chicago at their Botanic Garden conference. And I put that portfolio of work into an ebook. And I think that I included a few observations about the themes of the different. So I think I broke it into 4 or 5 groups of photos and had like, I went to Chicago Botanic Garden and I took photos. And then these photos are like, these are leaves. So here's a paragraph about leaves and patterns. So that's where I started. And that was probably 2021, maybe. So 4 years later, I feel like my photography has changed in that time, and some of my thinking has changed. So now for the last few that I've done, so I can think of one in Death Valley, which I wrote about an over-photographed landscape. The one for Rocky Mountain National Park, I had a really personal connection with that park. My only brother passed away and when I was young, and right before that happened, my family had gone to Rocky Mountain National Park. So I've always had a really complicated relationship with that place due to that personal situation. And then this most recent one on the California coast, I read an article while we were there that just made me angry. And so it's like, I think that I've been letting more of that emotional resonance of the place bubble up or something that I read that kind of spurred on some more thoughts. So I've made the last few a lot more personal. And the interesting thing is I've received very few public comments about the ebooks, but I've been receiving a lot of private messages. So it feels like the more personal essays are resonating, but not in a way that people want to talk about publicly. Yeah. So it versus like somebody leaving a comment on my blog saying, oh, I really enjoyed your photos, great ebook. I'm getting emails like, oh my gosh, that I had a very similar personal story and you made me think about it differently. Or so it also feels like these more personal essays are connecting in a different way with a certain group of my audience.
Sure.
So that's how I've evolved my writing. And one of the things you said, Michael, when you were talking about tree, like viewers might get boring or get bored. The role of the viewer is also something that's changed in my thinking. I'm now starting to do these just as much for me as for the viewer. So that this is about me working through my thoughts of connecting with the landscape and what resonated with me and how I want my work to be seen. And I'm including photos that I don't care if you like or that they're weird or you might get sick of them. This is about me expressing myself through my photography and my writing. And the viewer, I want people to enjoy them, but I really don't care as much as I did when I started doing this a couple of years ago.
That's something I keep reminding myself of too. Because like this last ebook that I did, where it was reflecting on my favorite images of 2024. So, and maybe that impacted its draw to people to download it. As it wasn't a cohesive, like most of my other ones were around a particular season or a single location, whereas this was kind of all over the place. And I did all that writing, and to your point, like I keep reminding myself, like this is also for me. I really enjoyed the process of putting together the writing because it made me think back to every single experience related to making the photo in the field, or how I approached the processing, or how it tied into something going on in my life, either around the time I made it or around the time I was editing or titling it or whatever. So that's it's a lesson I'm trying to learn is I want the viewers to enjoy it, but also I really like what you're saying about this is also for you. And I think the hard part to remember sometimes, especially in a world where social media exists, is the truest representation of ourselves as creatives or as artists or whatever term you want to, or label you want to apply to us, is this is my work. This is what I want to put out. And this is the story I want to tell, and kind of take it or leave it. That's who I am. That's what this is all about. Would I love to, like, oh, here's all these comments on my blog post about it or whatever, and actually make it look like it's a lively area? Sure. But I've also seen the same thing that you're referencing, more so with some of the email newsletters that I sent out, especially around the time that my mom passed away. And then with Heather, my fiance's breast cancer diagnosis, I've gotten quite a few emails in response to that. Whereas on a social post or on the blog post related, like, I haven't gotten really anything, a few here and there, but most of it has been driven more through those private conversations, which to me are far more valuable. And I know it's a me problem, but it conflicts with this desire to, like, I want my stuff that's out there in the public view to look like people are engaged and interacting with it. But there's tremendous value that, hey, somebody took the time to hit reply and send me an email and express their own story or how it made them feel or whatever. So it's that constant push and pull to me between the environment that we're steeped in every day with social media and society of 2025 versus those deeper connections that are not only just as valuable, but really probably more valuable because of the nature of the quote. It's like somebody writing you a letter versus sending you a text. Like, they put in more effort and thought into that. It resonated with them enough to encourage them to do so. So I'm going to kick this to you, Jeffrey, because I know as I sit and edit all these episodes, I know my ADHD brain has a tendency to go on and on and on and dominate some of these conversations. So I'm trying to be better about letting you get a breath in or get a word in when I take a breath. So anything you want to pick Sarah's brain over on this topic? Or any input you got from your perspective? Yeah,
from my perspective, I'll just say I did a West Virginia ebook, and Sarah was helpful on that, and just some of the technical and feedback on that process. And I'll just say, as a photographer, I felt it a very rewarding way to release the work. We touched on the social media and how that is, but the whole process of sitting down I felt like there was more pressure to curate a more defined set of images versus, oh, this one's edited, let me toss it on social media real quick, see how it does, and it passes in the night. So I appreciated that, of really studying that work, going through that and selecting those images that were going to go into mine. I've still got a long way to go to get to that, the flow of the book, I think, but just curating that piece and then just the writing to go with it. I found that was a valuable piece. And to your two's point, whether someone, I think it resonates with some people, not all people, and I think that's just fine. But I did appreciate putting some words, more verbose words than just here's this 2-line Instagram description. In the West Virginia one, I talked a little bit about how I found it, repeated visits to the place, just the exploring of it. So I just thought the whole process, if you're on the fence of considering an ebook release, I think to Sarah's point, yeah, it's more work, I think, going into it, especially as you get up to speed on the layout software and stuff. But I feel like the reward for it was well worth it, in my opinion.
So that's a great segue, Jeffrey. I seem to say that a lot in these episodes. But anyways, I use PowerPoint for my ebooks. So I've had people ask, hey, what specialized software are you using? I'm like, I'm just doing these. Like, for what I'm doing, they're not educational. I'm not doing a lot of diagrams or anything like that. So it's strictly like, here's a full page version of the photo, and then maybe here's a thumbnail version with text. And Lord knows I used PowerPoint plenty in my former career. So it's what's familiar to me. But I think Jeffrey, and then certainly you, Sarah, you use Affinity Publisher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe can you talk about, I don't know, this is obviously in mostly audio-based format here, but is from an Affinity standpoint, to me, there's a significant learning curve there, but I know it's far more robust in terms of flexibility of layouts and everything. But I guess for somebody wanting to jump into an ebook for the first time, I guess my viewpoint would be you don't need to go out and purchase Affinity. I own it. I bought it when it was on sale. I've opened it 3 times and gone, ugh. But what's your take on that, Sarah? Is it worth taking the time? like I'm kind of making an argument against taking the time, especially if you're doing your first one, to dive into something that's truly meant for it versus like doing it like me, like I'm going to just use PowerPoint or Word or whatever. What's your basis around there? Why do you use Affinity versus just keeping it a little bit more basic?
Well, so I do feel like I have momentum with this, and I like releasing my work this way. So I think there's like our free eBooks page is the second most visited page on our website. So other than our homepage. So I feel like that speaks to like that there's some resonance with our audience. So for me, it feels worthwhile to invest the time in learning the software. I learned InDesign, which is way more complicated. Yes. And if you have the Creative Cloud, the Adobe Creative Cloud package, the full version, not just the photography plan, you have InDesign already. And you don't need a lot of skills to be able to put together an ebook. You need to know how to place the images. You need to know how to add the pages, place the images, put in a text box, make the text flow from page to page, maybe put in the page numbers, and then you need to know how to export it as a PDF. So it's not that complicated. Those are probably 7 or 8 things that you would need to know. And on Affinity,
so you're saying I'm too dumb to figure out Affinity Publisher?
I think that's what she said. I'm pretty sure that's what she said.
If you know
so
how to
easy, Michael. My God.
If you know how to produce a podcast or process a photo. No, I'm not saying that at all, because it is a learning curve for sure. Like you have to sit down, you have to watch some videos to figure out how to do it. If you're only doing 1 or 2, I do think probably like a PowerPoint or like if you use Apple, the iBooks, I think that's what it's called. They have a little book publishing software. Some people have used, there's just a company that's like Shutterfly, but not Shutterfly. Blurb.
Blurb, yeah.
Yeah, like putting together a Blurb book, and then you can download the PDF. So there are options out there that do all the layout for you, or doing something like what you're doing, Michael, where you're using PowerPoint, and if you know how to use Word or PowerPoint, you can easily translate those skills into putting together a PDF. So instead of doing it as a PowerPoint presentation, you just export the document as a PDF. So there are lots and lots and lots of ways to do it. I think the benefit of Affinity Publisher is it's very affordable, and the learning curve is pretty low for people who have the technical skills to do photography. You have the
for
technical
people not
skills.
like me.
Yours is an investment of time issue, not a skill issue.
No, it totally is. Like I said, I've opened it like 3 times. So yeah, it's totally a me issue. This one.
Yeah. And so
I went,
the other thing, go ahead, Jeffrey. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. You keep going.
All I was going to say is once you have it set up, all you do is reuse the file. You save the file as something new, you load in the new text, and you place the new images. So it's setting up the template, and that's the part that has the learning curve. Once you figured that out, so in my case, I do share a gallery of my photos, and I share the ebook, and the ebook takes about an extra hour to do because I have the essay written, I have the photos done. It's not that much extra time.
You don't even want to know how long I spent on that last ebook of mine where I did all the writing. It was weeks.
But you might have been doing that anyway. You might have been including those as captions on your website. So I'm not counting that time. I'm counting the time of taking, I have the written text, I have the photos. Like how much time does it take me to put them in the ebook? Very little.
Yeah. Well,
the most time is sequencing.
You were taking it from blog posts and sort of going gallery. So you were going to be writing text, curating images. The extra piece is the putting it into ebook format. So it's not like it was 0 to ebook. It was you were already doing text and curating images, and now you're putting it into an ebook format.
Exactly. Yeah. How long did it take you, Jeffrey?
Oh, it took me forever. It took me weeks to do mine. Balanced among other things, but I went Affinity because Sarah said that's what you should use, so I went with Affinity.
Sarah said so.
Yeah, Sarah said so.
We need to get a sticker that says that. Sarah said so.
I know.
That would be fun.
But in all reality, I've used InDesign in the past and for some other projects that were non-photography related, so I was semi-familiar with like layout software. Affinity was just easier, especially to Sarah's point. There's really only like 6, 7, 8 things you need to know how to do to be successful with it, so Affinity was inexpensive because I don't have the full Adobe Creator Suite plan. I just have the photography plan, so that extra tool was there. But it took me a while, but a lot of it was just not so much the software as much as just the curation, the writing, and imposter syndrome of, are these the right images to include and all of that. So I'm including all of that overhead time. If I subtracted, these are the images I would have edited from the trip. I usually didn't write a lot of stuff before, so writing was new for the ebook, which I thought was great. It didn't take a huge amount of time to do. A lot of it was, like to Sarah's point, it was stuff I was already going to do, whether I released it on social media, on a website, or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's valid. So one thing I've thought, Sarah, is we've also seen I don't know if it's a recent trend or just a more visible thing that's been taking place in the space of nature photography specifically, is the publishing of zines. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about doing that? Obviously, you've basically got the foundation or 99% of the house built, so to speak, from that regard. Have you thought of doing anything like that and putting it up for purchase?
You're poking right at my softest, the most challenging part of my photographic existence, is because I want nothing more than a book. Yeah. And I have a concept for a big book, and it just has not come together. Yeah. So that project would be entirely focused on Death Valley. And I had a lot of momentum, and then thing after thing after thing just fell through, and it was really frustrating. So I've returned to the drawing board and what do I want to do with presenting my work in a more physical way? And so I've gone around and around about, should I do a year-end collection and put it into a zine, kind of like what Ben Horn is doing? Mm-hmm. Should I set aside the Death Valley idea and like the Great Smoky Mountains? I have a lot of photos from the Great Smoky Mountains in the spring because we've done multiple trips there. They look visually really nice together. But I haven't shared most of them. So should I work on that as a zine project, like a small hardcover or soft cover book? So hard.
Well, I will vouch. I would love to, whether it be a quote unquote proper book or a zine from you. I would absolutely love that. Although, and maybe this is something we can talk to also, but like me as a consumer, I've got, I don't know if they're in frame, but I've got stacks of books over there. I've got 2 shelves full of books. I've got zines I've purchased. The number that I've actually gone through and read is embarrassingly small. And for me, again, I feel like this is the episode where we talk about it's all Mike's problems, but I haven't given the time to sit down, and I keep talking to Heather. My dream would be to have a nook in the house where I can sit in a chair with good light and it's quiet and I can just sit and read. For our problem, Jeffrey and Sarah, we have a small zoo in our house, 2 dogs and now 5 cats, which is ridiculous.
5? Oh my
goodness. we got
they
2.
Just added one.
We lost the one in January, and then we've since added 2 kittens. So yeah,
I knew you had 1 kitten. I didn't realize you had 2. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a long
I'm
story.
jealous.
But yeah, love them all. But it is hard to find a quiet corner of the house sometimes to go and sit or find a piece of furniture. But anyways, so that's a me problem. That's a number of animals problem for me. But I'm curious, it does feel like, and maybe it's a photographer problem, that we want to support other photographers. We have this drive to collect books. I believe, Sarah, if I remember correctly, you had a bunch of books, but then you were selling or giving away a bunch because you just had so many. I guess what I'm getting at, are we expecting too much of our viewers or audiences? And there's not a ton of people doing, for instance, the ebooks right now. I wouldn't say there's a ton of people even doing the zines. There's probably a handful I know that have done them consistently. But if this trend continues to grow and suddenly 10%, 15, 20, 25% of photographers that are known and have a decent following are doing all these ebook releases and that, are we flooding the zone kind of scenario where we've all collectively created this problem for our audiences where they can't keep up and find the time? And I don't know, maybe again, it's just a me problem, but I feel like at least within photographers is a trope. I've got 60 books and I've read 2. I'd be curious to kind of dig into your thoughts on that a little bit. And
Yeah,
if it's, hey, Mike, you're just lazy and don't manage your time well, that's perfectly fine too.
No, I think that's a huge issue with modern life, and I'm pushing back against it. So I have a massive book collection. I go on thrift books and I buy used photography books all the time. And like I've just had I got a new William Neal book, a new old William Neal book, an Elliot Porter book, like, and they're like $4 each. So that's what I spend my time in the evening doing, is I just flip through a photography book and I'm trying to read them all and make notes about them all. So that's something I'm doing for myself so that I'm more thoughtfully engaging with photography. And again, that's a way of me trying to push back against, I don't want an algorithm driving what I see and what I think about photography. So I'm trying to have a more engage with more physical products like books and zines and that sort of thing. But I also, so I totally, what you're saying about, are we asking too much of our audience if we collectively are producing all of these ebooks and zines? And yeah, I think we are. And it's from a business standpoint, it's absolutely a challenge. But I made the decision when I decided to quit my old career, which I loved and was good at and really enjoyed. Like if I'm moving from photography or from that career to doing photography, I want to do it on my own terms. And I think one of the things that I decided early on was that I would rather cultivate a small audience that is more in line, like that I'm doing the things that I'm most comfortable doing and that work the best for me. And that I don't feel like I'm compromising on the things that how I want to spend my time and the way I want to present myself to the world, and accepting that comes along with a smaller audience. So I do think that that's one of that I present myself to the world in a way that means I'm going to have a smaller audience. And that means I'm never going to be able to go to a big publisher and say, here's a book proposal. Can I work with you on presenting like of national epic landscapes of the national parks? Like that's never going to be me. I'm going to be the person that has to push really hard to sell 1,000 self-published books. But that's a decision that I've made. That also means that I have cultivated an audience where I do feel like I can expect a little bit more from them because they're a certain type of person, I would say, where they do appreciate the fact that I'm writing essays that require a little bit of time.
You hit so many big things in that. There's so many topics in that. Wow, the being deliberate with consumption. You touched on it. You're making time to consume photography, right? Like without stuff. And I feel like that's one of those things, at least I feel like in people like three of ours position, we're so used to getting photos, putting them online, the overhead of getting them online, the mailing lists, all of that sometimes we lose sight of. It's good to take some time to step back and deliberately consume content ourselves in a way that helps us and improves us, because I think it plays into our own creativity. So the fact that you said you sit down with photo books and make notes, like that is just, that pace of things I think is so great, because it probably enriches your mind so that when you're out being creative, something is probably registered or clicked and giving you a deeper view that more in tune. So just, wow, so much in that.
Yeah. I think for me, I love watching a select few photography channels on YouTube, like Thomas Eaton. Somebody just asked me the other day, like, what's your infatuation with him? I was like, he's just entertaining. So for me, I find a lot of inspiration through that. But yeah, I would love to shift my behaviors to taking that more deliberate, slower approach and sitting down with one of the dozens of books that I've got and consuming it and taking the time, not just to flip through and look at the pretty pictures, but read the words along with it too. Because I do find, I don't go out and shoot a ton. Have I been out? I don't even know if I've been out since I got back from the Smoky Mountains in April, maybe once, but I don't think I have. So we're going on, 2 months since I've used the camera, and I'm fine with that. Like, to me, that kind of keeps the spark alive for me. And I've got, in a few weeks, I'll be leaving for Colorado here. And like, I'm starting to get that ramp up of I'm excited and energized to go out and do it. But I think if I take the time to be more deliberate in I hate to use the word consumption because it sounds very commercial or capitalistic or whatever, but if I took the time to delve into the world that people have offered up through their books and zines that I own, I'd also have that steady drip of inspiration affecting me more so. Like, I get inspired from social media. There's no question about it. And, I try to take the time to share an image if it really speaks to me and whatnot. And I do most of my communication via stories these days with people rather than just leaving a comment or whatever. But it's still not a very deliberate process. It's like, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I'm bored. I'll just swipe through and see if anything catches my eye real quickly. I'm fully aware I'm on a kind of ramble here, but I swear there is a path. But is the... Stop laughing, Jeffrey. It's the asking for a little bit more from our audience, or even if we're not asking it, it's giving back to those followers, your audience, whatever you want to call them, that are more engaged. And like, I've decided I'm putting very minimal effort into my public social media post these days. I sit down once a week, I schedule out the following week, I include the title, maybe a quick little like 1 or 2 sentences, and then I'm done. Because frankly, I put it on Instagram and I'm reaching, it's the usual thing, right? You're lucky if you reach 5% of your audience, and then how many of them actually engage with it. So I'm putting more of my effort into my Patreon audience, whether they're paid or free. I look at them as they've taken the effort. It's kind of like writing that letter analogy from earlier in the conversation. They've taken the effort to go to a different website, to sign up and say, hey, I'm interested in your work and getting your updates. So I'm putting all my effort in there. And that's where my featured frames comes into play, where I take all of my posts for the week that I'm putting on Instagram and Facebook. But kind of like that ebook approach, I'm providing exclusive written content for each of the images and providing those stories or the emotional aspect of it from things going on in my life at the time or now and how it might relate and everything. So all of this rambling comes back around to, I think it is important to realize that there are those people that are more vested in you as a photographer, you as a person, and obviously your work as well. And I think all of us would be better served in putting more of our effort to not cater them, but to recognize and acknowledge and kind of like you were saying, Sarah, with the ebooks, reward them. Like, hey, you've taken the time to sign up for my email newsletter. I'm putting this out here not as a lead magnet, which is kind of how I view my ebooks, is it's a way to get people to sign up for my email, but you're approaching it more from that giving back to your audience that has already put that extra effort in. So I don't know. I'll open the floor there because I know that was a meandering ramble around the park, so to speak, but it's something I'm trying to be more conscious about and more appreciative of, as well as I do have this core audience that's more vested. So I need to acknowledge that as opposed to just like, Mark Zuckerberg, you son of a bitch.
Well, I think that the way that I view a lot of this is that I'm going to put 10 to 15% of my effort into the trends. Like, I decided I would try doing reels, and I am a very verbose person. Doing anything in 45 seconds is a ridiculously hard task. But it's like, could I share my work in this new, different way? I like doing video more now than I used to. So it's like, I might put a little bit more time into doing a YouTube video here and there. But I know myself, and I know that I can never do a weekly video. So, and I don't want to be a videographer who occasionally photographs. I am a landscape and nature photographer, and that's the core of what I do. But I can still dedicate 15% of my time to following those trends and seeing how it does. But that other 85%, I really do want to stay true to what I most enjoy and how I want to be present in the world. So I think there's room for both. And I think the other thing is that the thing I have most learned in this field is that momentum is so important, and that if you put out your first ebook, you aren't really going to know whether or not it was worth your time. You're going to have to put out 5 or 6. And then you'll have the information to see, like, am I getting the downloads that I want? Am I getting the feedback that I want? Like, just doing one, I don't think it's enough. It's like how I've done YouTube, where I've dipped my toe. I've done a video once every 6 to 9 months. Like, I have no idea based on doing it that way, whether or not it's worth my time. I would need to put in, I'm thinking about doing 12 episodes that I'll either release weekly or biweekly. And then after those 12 episodes, then I'll have enough information to know whether or not this is worth my time and whether I liked it. So I'd say the same thing. If people are considering ebooks or zine is harder because like doing 5 or 6 zines would be so much work. And so one in that case might be worthy, but like that testing framework. But for something like an ebook, unless you're doing it purely 100% for yourself, if you are looking at some of those business metrics, I think it's really hard to know until you've done a few, whether it's a good investment of your time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a push and pull between wanting to do it strictly for myself, but now this is what I'm trying to live off of is photography. So it's really hard for me, at least, to do it for the love of doing it. But also you've got the devil on the other shoulder going, yes, but you must, worry about I'm doing it with the podcast. Like I'm checking the metrics multiple times a day. Yesterday, how many times has episode 2 been downloaded? And I got up and I was doing it this morning. I was like, dude, just effing stop, man. Like it's not going to change anything. So give it the time to just
on that. Because it feels like everybody is taking the same courses on like how to build a passive income business. So everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you do something that's just a little different, that attracts attention. So like I think in some ways it's like what other people are saying is like the business strategy that you should follow. Like pushing back a little sometimes is what actually helps you stand out.
Yeah. Well, and Ben Horn's a great example of that. I mean, I know part of me looks at Ben, it's like, dude, you could be doing just a few things differently or a few things more, and it would totally, or has the potential to totally change your income or whatever. But yeah, if I don't respect the hell out of him for the stance he's taken and sticking to it, I mean, it'd be so easy for him to follow the path that others have done. But to your point, Sarah, like because of how he's doing and also how long he's been doing it, like I couldn't start doing his approach tomorrow and have the success at it. He's been doing it for over a decade. But because of that consistency, he stands out in many, many regards, not just because he's a film photographer, but because of the things he doesn't do. And he's kind of forged his own path. And I love the path he's taken. But I'm also fully aware of the fact that it's a slower path. It's probably a harder path as well. And it's his path. It doesn't mean it's the right path for me or for anybody else. But I do think you're absolutely right. Like we all see it in the photography space of the chasing of trends and, whatever that might be, YouTube or podcast or small scene versus grand scene, bark versus clouds, whatever. But it's hard to find your own corner of the world, especially again with social media where it's so in your face so much of the time. And I think social media drives a lot of that sameness because of the way the algorithms work. You're going to see people doing the same things, whereas the person that's doing their own little kind of maybe slightly quirky thing doesn't get picked up quite as much. So it's definitely a tricky path to walk when you've got all these different pressures, whether it be financial, business, societal, social media, personal interest, et cetera, et cetera. So we're at about an hour, I think a little under. So first, Jeffrey, I'll toss it back to you since I've done what I do best and talked. Anything else you want to throw out there or pick Sarah's brain on this topic?
I think the one thing just to throw out there, it's because we've talked a little bit about the business and trying things, and Sarah saying leaving a corporate type job, didn't want to go to photography, wanted to do what you wanted to do. I think it's finding that Venn diagram of what works from a business sense and what works from a process sense. So in regards to the ebooks, I enjoyed the process of putting one together, and so there's a bit of a balance there, right? Like if it worked somewhat and I enjoyed the process, it's good. I'm on the YouTube weekly video routine, which to Sarah's point, it can be tough to balance trying to get a video out every week while doing your photography, but I do enjoy the YouTube process. So if I didn't enjoy the process of an ebook, then it may not be the way for you. Same with Sarah's. Maybe not enjoy the weekly YouTube process, so that may not be the fit. It may be a monthly video or something like that. But And all things, considered in the ebook thing, if you try an ebook and it's not for you, there's nothing wrong with that. Find what you enjoy, put your energy into that, and that may correlate to something that's a little different than what everybody else is doing. Maybe a smaller audience, but I think I agree with Sarah. Sometimes a smaller audience isn't necessarily bad as long as it's a more engaged audience and people feel more true to you, just to sort of pull all that together.
Right. What's the term? 1,000 true fans?
Yes.
You can get 1,000 true fans. You've made it essentially. You don't need 1 million followers to truly be successful. Yep. So Sarah, we'll kick it back over to you. Any last thoughts? And we can go. Jeffrey, I don't know how much time you've got today, but we can go longer if you've got multiple points you want to chat about, Sarah. By all means, this is your forum, believe it or not, as much talking as I've done.
Well, you need to be able to talk to do a podcast, right?
Well, this is true. But I also have a co-host.
I think that the first question that somebody listening to this has to ask themselves is like, I think, are you missing something in the way you're presenting your work? Because if the way that you're doing it now feels good, like some people like to release images one by one on social media. Other people like to do like David Thompson or Alex Noriega, like where they kind of do a big gallery release where they put effort into publicizing it, release a full curated gallery of photos, and then trickle out the photos one by one on social media. Like if that's working for you, then the ebook or your work might not work as well in an ebook. I think if you do a lot of grand landscapes, that the feeling of looking at grand landscapes one after another in an ebook, like that flow, that visual flow, that in the viewing experience, it just might not work as well for your photography. So reflecting on some of those questions, and then if you do feel like something's missing or that something we talked about today resonated, then it's not a huge investment of time, especially if you just want to share it with your friends and family. You could find one of the free PDF layout makers online, do it, and then share it and see if you felt like it was something that was fulfilling. Like a lot of the feedback that I've received from people that have been inspired by my ebooks to create their own is that they just liked it as a vehicle to share in a little bit more formal way with their family, friends, neighbors, what they've been doing. So it doesn't just have to be like for the three of us, we're all doing this as a business, that for people who just want to share their work, it could be a great way to do it, that where you don't have to be thinking about any of these business considerations that we're thinking about. Yeah. And then for the people who are doing it as a business, like the three of us are, I do think you have to be thoughtful about like how much, like at what point does this become a paid product? Because that's one piece of feedback and a little bit of pushback I've received from some colleagues of like, why are you giving this away for free? That this should be something that you charge for. Because like Bill Nill, he's somebody who was doing ebook portfolios early on. And Bill has not said this to me at all. So I'm not singling Bill out for that reason. It's more that like I bought some of Bill's early ebook portfolios, and my free portfolios are equivalent in size to the portfolios that he's charging for. So he probably has a little more photos in his paid portfolios, but they're similar. So that's something to consider is like, Michael, for the example you gave of your 2024, where would that tip into being a paid product where you charge, say, $15 or $20 for it? So those are just a few final things that I'd mention that we maybe didn't touch on in our conversation, but that the audience might want to think about.
Yeah, definitely a great point about not everybody's doing this for a business. It's easy to forget about that sometimes. Is our audience is probably a good chunk of people that are just doing it for fun or family or, again, the love of it, what have you. And with the 2024 reflective ebook, like part of me has wondered, like, given all the content that I wrote for that, would that have been better? Like, I would have had to pare it down a little bit, but would that have been better as a zine and putting it out in that manner? And I've got a lot of trepidation around that. And what if it doesn't sell? Obviously, there's less risk with a zine, but I think that's a great point too. Like finding that balance between putting too much work into something And then either that's building up false expectations for yourself, or it's like, I didn't really have any expectations releasing that ebook other than like, oh, I hope a lot of people want to download this. And then beyond my email subscribers, I think I've only gotten like, I don't know, I haven't looked at it recently, but it hasn't been a lot of downloads. So I think just naturally I was kind of like, oh, people don't care. But, just looking at it the wrong way too, again, from a purely business standpoint. And there was a lot of that process, especially having lost my mom last year. And a lot of the writing in that revolved around the emotions of that and the processing of that. That ebook was definitely, at the end of the day, ultimately for me, and just keeping that perspective too. So yeah, great points. So yeah, I think we can put a pretty good bow on this one. Obviously, again, for our listeners, for our viewers, if you've got any thoughts, questions, comments, etc., head over to our Patreon page. Once again, the episode conversation is available for everybody, free or paid, and we'd love to get your input and have a conversation with you over there. Otherwise,
thanks again, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great. Hopefully our audience doesn't feel like we fumbled our first guest episode here on Shutter Nonsense. I think it went well. So yeah, and we'd love to have you back in the future if there's ever anything that you've got that you want to talk about. And actually, that's a point too for anybody listening. I know we've got a lot of photographers that are listening to this, or at least they listened to episode 1, I know, in the real world. If you've got a topic that you want to come on and talk about, like Jeffrey and I have a list of topics that we want to cover in upcoming episodes, but from a guest standpoint, I want to kind of throw it out as, I don't want this to be an interview format thing. We've talked about that already, but if you as a photographer have a topic that you're passionate about and you feel you've got something to come on and discuss, then by all means, reach out to us as well through contact@shutternonsense.com, or social media, whatever, however you want to reach out, and we can look at getting you on for a future episode. We're still not going to be totally guest driven. Maybe do this every 3, 4, 5 episodes. I don't know. We haven't really gotten that far in our discussions yet. But anyways, we'd love to have some people throw their hats in the ring for potentially coming on here as guests too. So with that, we'll wrap it up. So thank you again for listening and watching. And until next time, take care. And again, Sarah Marino, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
It was fun.
Bye.